Hello everyone, this is Shannon for Waffle Flower Crafts. In this video we are going to create this really sweet spring basket Easter card using some new dies from Waffle Flower's February release. We're going to start today's card with the spring basket die set. This die set is so cute. I love the basket. It has a beautiful woven texture that the die creates on your cardstock, really pretty. It also comes with a bow, a handle, a chocolate rabbit, and a couple of eggs dies as well, different sizes. The first thing I went ahead and did was cut out the basket and the handle out of some white cardstock. I'm not going to create a backing for my basket. I just have my basket down onto a piece of white cardstock, just a scrap, and then I'm going to trace around my basket with a pencil. Once I've traced around, I'm going to grab a pair of scissors and I'm going to fussy cut this basket out. I'm not going to cut right on my pencil line. I'm going to cut a little inside of it just so that this backing is a little bit smaller than the die cut that we're going to place on top. This just ensures that you don't see any little edges of that backing poking out from the sides. So now that I have this cut, I'm going to now make a quick mask. I have a little scrap of clear contact paper and I'm going to die cut it with this top portion of the die, of the basket die. I just need a little section here, just this right under this lip, to mask off so I can really create a little bit more dimension on the lip later when I do some ink blending. If you don't have contact paper, you can create this mask out of copy paper or even a post-it note. And once I've die cut, I just separated with a pair of scissors the lip from the rest of the basket, and I'm just going to keep that basket portion, not the lip. Now I'm going to do some real quick ink blending. I'm just going to ink blend all three pieces, the backing, the handle, and the basket, with some antique linen distress oxide. You could save yourself a step here and actually just die cut this basket out of some kind of cream cardstock instead. But I just found it simpler for this project to just die cut everything out of white cardstock and then add my color. Now I'm moving on to fossilized amber. This is going to be kind of my darker shade. I'm going to ink blend the whole backing of my basket, a little section of my handle just to create a little bit of roundness, a little bit of shape, and then I'm going to ink blend the sides of my basket as well as my lip, and this is where the mask comes into play. I'm going to remove the backing on the contact paper, and then I'm going to place that mask right under the lip of the basket. This is going to protect the rest of the basket while I ink blend that lip, and that's going to just help to make that lip pull away from the basket a little bit more and have a little bit more of dimension, just a little bit more roundness. Now I've ink blended with the fossilized amber, I'll remove the mask, and my basket is basically done. I'll just kind of put it together just to make sure I've got enough contrast. You can see the difference in the layers, and I like the way it looks, so I'm now moving on to my eggs and my chocolate rabbit. So as you can see off camera, I die cut a rabbit as well as 6 eggs using the dies from the spring basket die set out of some white cardstock. I'm going to start with my chocolate rabbit here. I have 2 browns picked out. I started with Vintage Photo, which is kind of my lighter brown, ink blended the whole thing. Now I'm going to add a little shadow again to create a little bit of depth with ground espresso. Just ink blend at the bottom, create a little gradation, and then add a little bit of that ground espresso to the edges. Now I'm going to clean up real quick my mini water media mat, and then I'm going to move on to my eggs. I'm going to start with worn lipstick for my first egg. I'm going to do a real quick gradation on that. I'm going to do a gradation on all the eggs in all my different colors. I'm now moving on to candy apple for my red, and then I moved on to squeezed lemonade distress ink. I use distress ink here just because I don't have squeezed lemonade distress oxide. And I'm now moving on to my orange. Basically going to do a rainbow with these eggs, except for I am going to leave out green because I'm going to have a lot of green on this card with my grass layer that I do basically next. So I didn't want to have any more green, so I just kept green out of my rainbow for my eggs. I just finished Mermaid Lagoon Distress ink, again didn't have the oxide, and then I'm now doing my last egg, which is purple with Wilted Violet Distress oxide. I'm now going to move on to the Over the Fence die. This is a very versatile little die set. I know I'm going to refer back to this over and over again for whenever I need to build a scene. It's just going to be really handy and indispensable in my craft room. I'm going to start by die cutting the fence out of some white cardstock. I'll just use a piece of purple tape to hold in place. This fence is exactly the width of an A2 card, so it is 4 1/4, so it's going to fit perfectly on my card front. I'm now going to die cut the grass die out of a 4 1/4 by 4-inch scrap of white cardstock. This is going to be my grass layer on my card, and I'm now going to ink blend on this grass with a couple shades of green. I'm going to start with my lightest, which is Twisted Citron Distress Oxide. I'm going to ink blend the upper half of this grass layer with this lighter green. Once I finish ink blending it, I'm going to rotate my grass around and ink blend it with my darker green, which is Mowed Lawn. I'm trying to create a nice gradation between my two greens here. Ink blending with the water media mat is really so wonderful. This mini is a really great size for card making. It fits an A2 panel with some room to spare, and it's just really great because your cardstock doesn't slip and slide around in here, and I love being able to tap off the excess from my ink blending tool onto the mat. The mat is just really the perfect surface for tapping off that excess and really helps to create a nice smooth blend. I'm now going to move on to an A2 top folding card base made out of 110-pound white cardstock. I'm going to ink blend my background onto this, or my sky. I have a piece of contact paper that I cut with this cloud die from the scenery die set, and I'm just going to ink blend right along the top of that mask with some tumbled glass distress ink, or distress oxide, I'm sorry. It's a really simple way to create a background, and I just love the look. I think it adds lots of depth to my sky than instead of just ink blending like a light blue gradation sky, and it's so easy to do. And I've actually used this mask I'm probably up to 20 cards now with this mask. I keep using it over and over and over again. That's one of the great things about making contact paper masks, is they kind of stay sticky for a very long time. I had a little error there where I kind of crossed or ink blended a little bit too much and crossed my cloud line, so I just cleaned it up with a Tombow Mono sand eraser. It's a really handy tool, cleans up a little bit of ink that you might have on your cardstock and you want to remove, so super handy tool. Now I'm positioning my fence and my grass, and I realized I did need to trim off about a little bit more than a 1/2 inch off the bottom, and so I went ahead and trimmed that off camera. Now I'm going to adhere my fence layer onto the front of my card base. Just going to use some Tombow Mono multi-liquid adhesive here, just a liquid glue. You could definitely use a tape runner if you prefer, but I do like the little bit of wiggle room liquid glue gives me. I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back side of my grass layer and just adhere that directly onto the card front. I'm now ready to move on to my sentiment. I have the Rejoice Rabbit stamp set here. This also came out in the February release. I pulled off a sentiment from the set. It says Easter Blessings. I'm going to stamp it the upper portion of my card base. I'm going to ink it up in VersaFine Onyx Black ink and just stamp it at the top. Once I finish stamping my sentiment, I'm going to move on to putting my basket together. So the last thing I really have to do on this basket is cut a slit in the backing so that my egg and chocolate bunny can kind of slide in, and the backing will still kind of hide the ends of the eggs and the chocolate bunny. So I just put the two layers together, and then I traced with my pencil the top of the front lip, and now I'm going to take an X-Acto knife and cut just below that pencil line. This is creating that slit so I can tuck in all those eggs and bunny inside the basket neatly, and again, so those ends won't be visible from the front. So after I've cut the slit, I'm going to grab my eraser and just carefully erase that pencil line. And now I'm ready to kind of put this all together. I'm going to grab some liquid glue again. I'm going to add liquid glue to almost everywhere on this die cut. You do want to avoid placing any liquid glue on that front lip, because you could basically seal up that slit that you just created. So you want to avoid any glue on that front lip. You can do it on the back lip, just not the front. I then just put the two together and just double check to make sure that that slit was still open and free of any glue. I'm now going to add a little bit of glue onto the ends of my handle and just adhere my handle onto my basket. I'm now ready for the fun part, which is finally filling up this basket. I'm going to start with my chocolate rabbit and add some liquid glue to the bottom third of it. Then I'm going to move on to my eggs and add a little bit of glue to the bottom of them as well, and then just tuck them into the basket. As you can see, they're slit. We can kind of slide them into the slit, and any ends, like any end of the chocolate bunny, is hidden behind that backing layer. I'm going to continue to kind of fill this basket. I am trying to work fairly quickly because I don't want anything to set up quite yet, because once I get all the eggs in there, I want to be able to kind of just adjust them just a little bit so I feel like I've got this kind of arranged in a pleasing manner. Now that I have all my items in the basket, I'm going to grab some foam squares and place it on the back side of the basket. I did trim a little of those foam squares and added them to the handle, so the handle had a little bit of support as well, and just removed the backings, and now I'm sticking it onto the card front. To finish this card, I'm going to add a bow. I'm going to use the new Easy 3D Bows die. You get 3 different bow sizes. I use the smallest bow size and cut it out of some really light pink cardstock, and now I'm going to put this bow together. It's really easy. On the left and right sides, at the very ends, there's these 2 little slits. You can kind of see here. They're very small, but they slide into each other. So you're just going to kind of interlock those 2 slits. That's kind of the first step. So once I get those slits knocked in, I'm going to turn the bow around so it's upright. And now I'm going to give a press, a gentle press right down on those slits and kind of lay them flat. Then I'm going to grab the tails of the bow and fold them in half. There's a little score line, so it's very easy to know where you need to fold. And then we're going to tuck those ends back into the very center, which is kind of between the front and the back of the bow, and then squeeze my bow shut right on those slits again to kind of hold it all shut. The last thing I'm going to do is take that tail, and it's right in the center right there, and I'm going to wrap it around that middle of the bow there. Once I've wrapped it around all the way, I'm going to grab a little bit of liquid glue, add it to the very end, and then I'll fold that last little flap down to kind of secure my bow and hold it in place. I'm just going to use an X-Acto knife to kind of push that flap down for me. Now that my bow is all done, all I need now to do is add it to the handle. So I'm going to grab my glue, add a little dab of glue to the handle, and then just place my bow on top. Now that my bow is in place, my card is all done. I'll hold it to the camera so you can get a good look at this fun Easter card. I'm so happy with how this card came together. I just love the blended sky. I think it's such a perfect background for a spring card. I love the bright colors on this card as well. The nice gradations from the ink blending I think works so well with this. Really has a soft spring kind of feel. And I really just think this basket die is just so cool. I can't wait to try it with other stamp sets, possibly critters or flowers. I just think there's so much fun I can have with it, and I can't wait to play with it some more. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you want any more information on the products I use, please head over to Waffle Flower Crafts. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.